Hello, welcome to another
Welcome.
two-hander between myself and Jarrod. How are you, my good friend?
I am doing okay. How are you?
Yeah, I'm not doing too bad. It feels a bit strange, just the two of us. We haven't done one of these since the Great Wen, I think,
A great win, Alan Moore.
which
Yes.
still sticks
Yes.
in the mind, I think. Yeah,
It absolutely does. So hopefully we'll feel the same
yeah. How
today.
about this? Well, this was actually your idea, although, well, to be fair, it was a bit of a two-handed kind of idea, wasn't it? We have a few weeks break from other committed reads, and I kind of says, "Oh, I can't wait to dive into a crime book or two, to churn through a couple of books." And you went, "Well,
And I went,
um,
hello.
Jarrod has a lovely copy there of the book that we're going to talk about tonight, which is The Man Who Killed His Brother by Stephen,
Yes.
not R Donaldson on my copy, but R Donaldson on yours.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. I
And
guess I wonder why. Huh, that's interesting.
yeah, but you had this wasn't originally published under Stephen Donaldson's original name, isn't that right? If I've seen your review, isn't that right?
That is correct. Originally, this book was published back in 1980 under the name Reed Stevens,
Ah,
um, and pseudonym. And I forget the history. There was a little history behind it, and the they wanted he had I don't know, he had some kind of deal going with a publisher,
right.
and at the time he couldn't use like Stephen Donaldson. It was had something to do with publishing and how it worked back then and what have you. But then later on, um, he uh, he got with whoever published this version, Forge, and they were able to reissue them in hardcover, under his actual name. And
Oh,
this was like later, like 2000, 2000, somewhere around there. And so that's a little interesting tidbit of the publishing
definitely.
history of this series. It's actually a 4 book series.
And this is
Um,
book one, yeah.
and this is the first one, yes. And the and I had actually, when I spoke to Mr. Donaldson last year at ICFA,
Clang.
uh, he actually said he wanted to do more. He actually said he had
Interesting.
a further plan for the series, like a planned ending type of thing, but it didn't work out that way. But things happen. But and I found that interesting when I was
Yeah,
talking to him, because these were the only books that I hadn't read yet
interesting.
before speaking with him. Because I told him, I've read all your stuff, and I was about to say, except for your crime fiction, but he beat me. He beat me to the punch, and he said, "Oh, did you read the Axe Brutus stuff?" And I'm like, I was getting there,
Haven't
but
finished my sentence. Yeah,
I found it interesting that that's the first thing he thought of when
yeah,
somebody says, "I've read all your stuff." That's the first thing he thought of to say, "Well, did you actually read these too?" And so I think these have a special place in his heart as far as the stuff he's accomplished, and which has been a lot. But so it's just interesting.
yeah. Obviously, so if he was bringing it up in conversation, because if he wasn't proud of it, he might just nod his head and say, "Yes, yes, all my best stuff," kind of something along that way. But we'll get
Yeah.
into whether or how successful he is in writing crime fiction. I suppose the other thing to point out for those that don't know that are coming along to this, Stephen Donaldson's more famous for writing fantasy science fiction. And we have just finished a read through of one of his short story collections, the incredible Reeve the Just and Other Tales, that you will find all of the discussions over on Jarrod's channel. We have very much enjoyed reading those. They are fantastic. So I think it's fair to say, even from that set of stories and the diverse nature of those set of stories, that he's a dab hand at writing fiction in general and crafting stories.
Yeah, yeah, he knows how to tell a story. There's no doubt about that. And he definitely has a way with the English language. He knows his way around words,
Yeah.
and he knows how to put them together very well.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're on to the man who killed his brother, and I suppose we'll start really with the setup of the main character, Axe Bruder. Uh, don't call him Mick, Axe Bruder, um, who is a former cop now, not even a private investigator. He's been sort of struck off from everything due to some things that happened in his past. And unlike an awful lot of crime fiction where the title tells you about what's going to happen in the book, this one tells you what has happened, insofar as the man who killed his brother predates the start of this story, this set of novels, which is an interesting
Yeah.
setup, I think.
Yeah. Uh, it is actually because funny story. I actually read the second novel before this one.
Right.
Um, so I've already read The Man Who Risked His Partner, and and of course there was some history in here, So there was a little bit of a
Absolutely.
spoilers for when I went into this book. The first book is a little bit of spoilers in the second book for this one, not much, but a little bit. And but what's funny is I thought I was going to see the man who killed his brother,
Yeah.
and but it's more just of a title. It's more of
Absolutely.
a
Yeah.
moniker for our main character. He is the man who killed his brother, and that's what everybody knows him as.
Hmm.
And it's something that happened to him in the past, which is part of the makeup of his character for why he looks like the guy in the middle of our screen here.
Well, to be fair, the guy in the middle of our screen here is probably a bit better dressed and a bit more manicured than our character Expruder.
Yeah.
But yes, he is somebody that has reached a stage in his life where he has sort of given up, or is sort of dealing with the trauma of the events of his past, for sure.
Yeah. And if just by the title of the book, for what you would assume is a fairly logical reason why he would be at the
Mm,
bottom of the barrel right now, basically.
yeah. So yeah, like I say, I think it's an interesting setup insofar as interesting. I didn't know the name of the second book in the series, but that also, given the events of this book, is where that character is starting from at the second book.
Hmm.
The title is where this character is starting from at the start of this book. So
Yep.
again, a really interesting kind of setup and play on the entire genre. I think in some ways, because the
Well,
hostage or
that's
whatever is the
yeah.
thing.
That's what I wanted to ask you because you have read a lot more crime fiction than I have.
Mm,
I've only read a few of the classics,
yep.
the Raymond Chandler and the Dashiell Hammett,
Hmm.
um, and some comics,
Hmm.
And so um, I know you've read a lot more crime fiction, and so I didn't know how much that setup was a little different or not.
I can't think of another book that does it.
Oh
Maybe
man,
I'm just totally blanking on things, but I mean everything else, everything else. I suppose Gabriel's Moon, which I just read, but again, that's more about the lore of the character, which plays into the. I suppose that's got a similar idea by William Boyd. That one has a similar idea, but again, it's more of a thematic thing that is explored through the novel, which this doesn't. I mean,
mm,
it basically just sets up the character, the reason why he's in a bar to start off with, his relationship with his brother's wife and family, and not really touched on after that, other than you can just feel the weight of it sitting on him
yeah,
the whole
yeah,
book.
yeah. Okay, that's cool because to me it was very unique because
Yeah.
I had never, I didn't know, I just didn't know how unique it was compared to the rest of the genre, the genre, and not like anybody's ever read everything, but still,
Hmm.
it. But that actually tracks for Donaldson's mo. He
Right.
he does unique stuff
Yeah. Yeah.
generally, so that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And in terms of the rest of the setup, I think for the start of the story, it does, I have to admit, do the two tropey things that annoy me most about crime fiction in general. One, the drunk detective slash policeman slash whatever. right? It
Sure.
definitely does that.
Yeah.
It is pretty much the entire character at the start. And the second thing that I really hate in general in crime fiction is where these serial killers involve themselves personally with the person that is investigating them. Right. So like a
Okay. Yeah.
relative or a wife or somebody that's in very big danger, and it just happens to be the person that's investigating them that can do it is the person doing it, rather than just being like my favorite crime stuff is the thing when they're just a cop or a private detective and they're going through the stages and just investigating the crime kind of cold and calculatedly. That sort of fits with my MO a little more, and I hate the fact that it gets personal at that stage, as if like a serial killer would change what they were doing because of who's investigating them or something like that. Not that that's exactly what happens in this book for sure, but it definitely
Mhm.
plays on that kind of level of threat, I think.
Yeah. 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 Okay. Yeah. I see. Look, once again, I'm not as familiar with those tropes in the
Hmm.
genre, so that's actually interesting to know that because it's so is the trope that he's investigating what's happening to his niece that
Uh,
um
uh, yeah,
or is it
it's more that in most other books it kind of comes along the way that they're just investigating a series of murders, okay, and that somewhere
yeah.
along the line they involve their wife, their daughter, their child, their mother, something along that, breaking the pattern, and therefore the stakes go up because of the personal nature of the
Oh,
crime,
okay.
if that makes sense, within
Right.
the book. So it's used to heighten tension, I think, in a lot of crime
Yeah.
books. And like I said, he uses both of those things, but both of those things are not used at the end. They are used in basically the first two pages in the setup, if you know what I mean, of the story,
Right.
rather than,
That's
kind of like the be all and end all, or to raise the stakes, which again I think is interesting, and I would imagine for Donaldson a very purposeful choice to take things that are very tropey within the genre and go right. I'm going to use these slightly differently.
yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, because uh, well, I love the opening chapter and how it shows his boss,
Mm-hmm.
um, Ginny Fistolari,
Mm-hmm.
and how he establishes the relationship between those two. I thought that was quite brilliant because um, it really got you into his character very quickly. Like you kind of knew who these people were right away, right off the bat, and I think that just allowed the story to flow after that because you didn't have to he didn't have to like backtrack that much other than giving some personal history here and there and giving why of course what happened to make him this way with his brother, but I like how you were immediately invested in the characters. Like you wanted to know them. You wanted to know what his problem was. You wanted to know why she's sticking with him.
Yeah.
You wanted to know what she gets out of keeping him around, and so like why would she keep this guy around for her investigations? But it gets explained. It gets explained in a good way that's just like oh, okay, cool. And I really like Ginny Fistolari as a character. I think she's great. Um, and that carries over into the
Yeah.
next book, just so you know.
I would imagine so. Like I would say, most crime fiction, most successful crime fiction, and especially the ones that are made in TV series, are really just character stories. A lot that
Mhm.
happen to be crime that happens along the way. And like you say, this very much sets the tone at the start of him being dragged out of a bar by his boss, so to speak. But it's very clearly more than a boss, even from
Mhm.
the very start. And even his rationale that she never comes to get him in the bar, like this is very much out of sorts for her. So something's different about this time.
Right.
She's coming to get him out of the bar. This is something a bit of the ordinary, and he sort of needs to snap out of it, but he's too drunk to get there. And he just can't. He can't make sense of it at the time, and so
Yeah.
you do get the sense that they know each other very well. You get the sense that there's something more romantic getting involved, and you get the sense that he's broken in a way that she's trying to pull him back into reality constantly throughout his life. And all of that's set up within about the first 3 pages, and I think very, very cleverly done in, not 300 pages of world building.
Yeah, yeah. This is only a 250-page book. It's
Yeah,
pretty short. So yeah, you got a really good sense of where they were. You got a good sense of the. I love the setting because it has a New Mexico flavor,
yeah,
um, which is where Donaldson's from. So it kind of makes sense. And the uh, the Puerto de Sal is the name of his fictional city,
right.
um, which means Plaza of the Sun or something like that
Okay.
in Spanish. And there's something to that. I haven't quite figured it out. There's something to that name, and I'm trying to find it, but I haven't quite figured it out yet exactly what it is. He chose that name for a reason, and I'm just
Right.
I can't figure it out yet. I should ask him next time I run into him.
Yeah. Well, you
If
do
I,
bring up the point about the kind of place where it's set, because it is a very kind of, it's a community that has plenty of little silos and cultural groups that live within it, and I think even this idea that, the Latino population, the Mexican population, you have white population, etc. That within that, and even within that, you have drug culture. The different classes of people throughout the story. But I think the nature of all of those communities being siloed from each other plays a large part in the crimes themselves, and in how these people don't really talk to each other who are even within the same cultural community, or otherwise, and it kind of lends itself to create an environment where these crimes could have happened, so to speak, because
Mhm.
you would imagine, again, part of the setup, that disappearing of 13-year-old girls in any normal city or small place, regardless of how it looks that the crimes happened, would raise more of a alarm bell in any kind of small society if they were sort of more culturally integrated with each other, or more kind of, on top of each other. Like these kids were in different schools, but
Yeah,
outside of that, they should have been well connected.
yeah, yeah. It is interesting, and I like I really enjoyed how the that kind of setting was described. It really made me think about um, cities and how different cultures, like you said, they do segregate almost themselves within a city, in a town. And I've seen that here in Massachusetts, in Lowell. We have like a large Cambodian community. We have a
Okay.
large
Yeah.
Spanish community, a large like Greek community, and you can see that very separation that he sees, that he explains in this book. And you say, yeah, you think would create a bigger stir and a bigger, and nowadays that would be more the case.
Yeah.
You got to
Possibly.
remember that this
Yeah.
is written back in 1980, so um, back then they really there really could be a lot of things that gone on that a lot of people in the city did not hear about, and I think he really captured kind of that kind of you know because like the cops kind of knew
Yeah. Yeah.
in here, and but they weren't putting the pieces together because because he explains why that is, because of the way that people had to do file complaints, and they had that, in the way that some people didn't want to, some did, so there was all this red tape that was involved in
Mhm.
how the police connected things, and and where a private detective could connect them
Yeah.
uh, outside of the regular procedures, which I think is probably a regular type of crime fiction thing, where
Yeah.
private detectives are able to connect things because of getting around red tape somehow.
Yeah, well, I think in general, whether it's a private detective or cold case, and a new hotshot detective coming along,
Right.
or somebody that doesn't play by the rules, would be another type of character. Somebody that's a bit of a maverick. It doesn't matter about cut a few corners, as you say. They are generally the people that will come along and be the hero of the day in some marks. But again, interestingly, I think for us and with the way Donaldson sets it up, our main character isn't seen as the brains. They're not the
Nope.
smart one. They are
Nope.
the brawn to a certain extent, but also not really, because they're not really in any physical shape throughout the entire book to really do anything like that. So it's more of a kind of them tagging along and being in the right place, and then eventually coming to some sort of realization. And in some cases, I think it's fair to say in this book, I think it's the fact that they're in such a inebriated and kind of compromised state that the book lasts for 250 pages because um, I think it's probably more obvious than I would like the the perpetrator of the crime. I think it's very clearly signposted. In fact, so clearly signposted that it caught me off guard in terms of like, well, it couldn't be that person because it's so clearly signposted to be that person, if that makes sense. But again, that could be a product of 1980s fiction writing and the kind of before the slew of detective dramas, TV series, procedural stuff that we
Yeah.
have had
Right.
in the 40 years since that has pretty much milked that entire thing to the point that everybody is an investigator
Yeah.
in their living room.
That's a very interesting point. I mean, that's a whole nother discussion of what the 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 CSI phase of
Yeah,
TV has done to crime fiction could be a whole nother
yeah, yeah.
exploration. Because yeah, you're right. Because that the time this was written, you got to keep in mind when you're reading it. Uh, could have been new, but you brought up a very interesting point in that this. I love how this guy stumbles through the book mentally.
Mm,
He is not the smartest guy, and he brings it up sometimes, which is to his credit.
yeah.
But he knows when he can't figure something out. He knows when to get help. He knows um, that much at least. But I love how he screws up and he doesn't make the right choices all the time. And the whole section when he was trying to find out things from the information guy,
Mm-hmm.
and he makes the bad decision to go to the wrong person
Yeah,
to ask for help, and that was bad. That
yeah,
wasn't good at all. And I just love how that kind of it didn't work out for him,
yeah,
and he had to go a different route. And I thought that was great.
yeah. No, no, absolutely. As we go through the book, it is obviously Ginny that puts an awful lot of the initial pieces together, and almost, I think, solves the crime to a certain extent within about 70 pages. The fact as soon as she spots the stack of paper, the
Mm,
bond paper sitting behind on the desk at that stage, it very much centralizes the crime in one place.
yeah,
That is the school board at that time, and then it's a case of who's who within that. And again, I think at that point it's probably more obvious than I would like that it was that person. But at the same stage, the action that plays out as often does in crime books is really what you're looking for in that middle section. You're looking for the action or the events that happen out, and then just the why at the end, or the resolution at the end. It's
yeah.
not sometimes like Columbo obviously did that very well, which they never hid who did it ever. That was the first thing they showed you, and it was the unraveling of the investigation and how they
Right.
catch him. Made that one of the most successful shows that there ever was in terms of crime fiction. So it's not to say that that has to be done that way. But
Yeah.
those action set pieces that we had a couple of the ways along, and the introduction of those other characters, like the other kid getting abducted, just so happened to be the daughter of another private investigator. I mean, that's a bit on the nose, but yes, created another dimension to that story and another character with which to put on the scene.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was yeah. You're right. On the one hand, you're like, okay, that's a little coincidental, but then on the other hand, it created this fascinating dynamic
Mm-hmm.
between them. So you take what like he introduces something that happens as a kind of an obvious trope,
Hmm.
you know, that all of a sudden this guy is connected as well in that way, and but then he does interesting stuff with it afterwards, so
Yeah, so if I think about some of the set pieces that sit within it, and some sit within the story, and some of them sit without it to be revisited later. Um, the first main one that I think that jumps to my mind is the scene where he stops the rape in the street of the young
yep, yeah,
Latino Mexican girl, whichever she is, at that stage, and the fact. I mean, I even when that was going on at the time, I was thinking to myself, what's the purpose of this scene? Because obviously you're showing him as a virtuous character, but I felt at the time it was to show more about the operation of the police force at the time and the people who were investigating and the sort of both ineffectiveness and the sort of the way that they were investigating crimes in some way, and I thought that was. I suspected there would be some other use for it, but it was just in my head, right? Why do we go here in this again for books that are like 250 pages long? Every scene has to matter. Every scene has to do something. What do you think about that scene?
yeah. I think you're right on about it. It was more about what the cops were doing and what they were able to do. We mentioned earlier about how the cops didn't have the ability to put together the different stories from the different aspects of this of society in the town, and how the different girls disappeared from the different school districts in different ways.
Yeah.
So they weren't relatable, and the cops, at least on the surface, they weren't relatable, and the cops didn't have the ability to put that together because of some natural restrictions that go into police work, but also because of some of the attitudes of some of the
Mm,
policemen as well. And the and I think with that particular case, we saw at first that the woman was willing to make the reports, do
yeah.
all that stuff. He said he was going to back her up. He said he was going to be there. But then what happens? It it gets turned around, and she goes and she says, "No, I'm not gonna." Um, and and because of the results of that, you got the sense that Axe Bruta was going to have an uphill climb as far as
Mm,
getting the cops on their side, and Ginny too, and getting the cops on their side in this, because that was a struggle,
yeah.
because you had that one uh, that one cop, I forget his name, um,
Acting that
Acton, yes,
the bad cop.
the bad cop, yeah, who yeah, who who wasn't as bad as we initially might have thought he was,
Yeah.
you know. He's still a jerk, um but he wasn't like I thought he might have just been a killer or a murderer, covering up really, really bad stuff or what have you, but he was just a general jerk, and just an everyday jerk.
Yeah, I mean, I probably didn't want to touch on this earlier, but since we're come up, the acting character is the big problem I have with the book from a crime point of view.
Oh yeah.
I if you were investigating that crime, you would have went and investigated him much immediately. If all your witnesses are telling you that he was interfering with the reporting of it, and that kind of stuff, you would have just been drawn to him immediately rather than just sort of every time he was mentioned, they were like, "Oh, I'll have to talk to him later" or something. Like it's
Yeah.
too. eh, You're not very good detectives or investigators if you're just ignoring the fact that that guy inserted himself into you know, uh,
Yeah.
prohibiting an investigation in some ways. Having said that, like as you say, when it comes around to it, and he's not the worst guy, he's just an ineptitude. He has a level of ineptitude
Yeah.
to it. It's
There's the ineptitude, but you also got to remember he had a history with the brother.
Mhm.
And so there might have been a natural reluctance on Brew's part to avoid him, to not want to get involved with him. You know.
Well, but again, that was all being led by Jenny, and I don't see Jenny was the sharp tack the whole way
Mm.
along. She knew what to do. I just found that bit just I was like, oh, this guy would have had access to drugs and everything. Like he could have taken him out of lockup. And again, how do I know all that? Because I've seen 40 years of crime dramas, etc. I've seen the dirty
Yeah.
cop, so many times. So again, I've got to forgive that to a certain degree. But again, I think when you're reading it in context, it was kind of like, oh, that guy. Even the way that they portrayed him when he came in and played the heavy on Exploiter, him and the guy showing up and taking the notes from him at that
Mm.
stage,
Yeah.
just kind of you would have been like, right, there's something up with this guy. Like we gotta, even if we can't get there, um, what we're doing. I have to say that's my one main criticism of the investigation and plot wise. Like, but the rest of it, the investigation, I really enjoy. I really enjoy, like I said before, I really like the investigation phase of any crime novel because I think that's where the clues are supposed to be. When you go and speak to the families, when he spoke to
Yeah.
the other daughter on the steps,
Yeah.
when he made his way around even into the offices of the board, the school board, um, and all of that kind of stuff. Those kind of pieces, and obviously when he get let into the police station to look at the files, which that scene we just talked about actually directly led to. Those
Mhm.
bits are the things that I really enjoy because it always makes me sit up and take notice of saying, right, what are the details of this crime? Because obviously when you're reading it, you're trying to work out who done it yourself. Like that's the whole
Mm.
thing. And especially as a reader, I think you're trying to think of, well, it's one of like three people, and if they did it, it was for these reasons, and trying to piece that together yourself before it's sort of given to you. So the investigation phase, I, I absolutely loved that part because like it's not very easy to page turn. That's the thing about crime novels. I'm sure you found it as well. There definitely is a point that happens way more than any other book that I just hit in the book, and I'm like, right, I have to finish this tonight. And it might
Yeah.
be 30 pages out, it might be 70 pages out, and sometimes it's 175 pages. You just get to a
Ooh.
point and you just gotta keep going. Sleep's not worth it. You have to know what's going to happen. And I think that as a genre, that's sort of why I like having these little interludes of crime now and again because it has that really propulsive reading, and you get, oh, okay, you really burn through a lot of interesting stories, regardless of how they sit.
Yeah. Yeah. And no doubt, I could definitely see some of our fast reading friends just flying through this in
Mm.
a day or two and not being able to put it down.
Yeah, I certainly did. Any other favorite set pieces?
Let's see here. Like well, you mentioned you mentioned them going around and questioning the families and questioning
Hmm.
you know the different people, and I love how you really didn't know how any of these people were going to react
Yeah.
at any time when they were going to question them. Like I never knew there wasn't any predictable people that they ran into. I never knew how anyone was going to react. I never knew um, what information they were going to glean from their interactions with the different people they were questioning, and you could have guessed in some cases, and you may be right, but you still had that doubt that you were going to be right about what how the other people were going to react, and so I thought that was very well done, and yeah, and it was obvious that it seemed like, I mean, to me, it seemed like he had a pretty good handle on how school systems work
Yep.
back then. I don't know. I'm sure a lot's changed since then, but uh, it seemed pretty accurate from what I've interacted with here as far as that goes. So I thought that was it was fun. It was fun to read, like you said, fun to watch them put two and two together.
Hmm.
I thought I very fun to watch Ginny uh, put things together, and then I liked how she told people what to do.
Yes.
You know, she and even if they didn't quite know why she was telling them, she had enough character and force to make them do it anyways, and enough um, they had enough faith in her
Yeah,
to carry on with that. And I like how that was portrayed, and I
yeah,
thought it just really strengthened her character along the way, and
yeah,
it made it so that you could see why she did what she did at the end. Uh, as crazy as that was a little
yeah.
crazy, that scene.
That was. I mean, that totally caught me off guard. Before we actually touch on that scene, I'll talk about Jenny because I really liked how Donaldson used dialogue with her and how saying things in a certain way got the response that she wanted all the time. You know, she'd push people if she needed to push them. She would hold back. Other times when she felt they needed room to breathe, it actually painted her as such a smart investigator. You know, she did whatever the scene needed at the time. And how you
Mm,
get a reaction out of people, because that's all that they're really looking for in the investigation part is to seeing how people react to be
mhm.
asked questions and
Yeah,
how they cope under stress and strain and the actions that
yeah.
people do. And it sort of meant that, like Stretto, the politician guy, the guy who wants to be president, you could sort of rule him out very quickly because of how he was basically protecting his back, you know, in a political
Yeah,
sense. You know, it was very easy to see. But again, that was from the way that they questioned him and the way they approached him, etc. That felt smart.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. That guy, you could tell because it was all about how it would affect his public standing.
yeah.
No
Even
matter
at the
what.
end when he left them the note, please vote for me in the next election, as if his actions wouldn't have done that by himself. You know, you had to make sure it's like the old YouTube thing. You can't make a video without saying please like and subscribe, because if you don't say it, you're not doing your bit. You know.
Yeah, and like you said, I think that also reinforced that um, that she's the one with the license and she deserves
Yes.
that, and so that kind of what you were just talking about there really brought that home. That um, like we saw in the beginning, Brew is a mess, and he's not the one who deserved this license and this kind of thing. So it was that was cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it was that. And so the hospital scene, obviously, there's a couple of hospital scenes, but certainly I'd say that scene where the bomb was placed with the guy that kind of left it down and then run away, and then Jenny taking it and taking responsibility. I mean, I thought she was dead.
Oh
I
yeah.
thought she was dead. Yeah, I thought. Well, you'd read the second book first,
Unfortunately,
so
I knew she wasn't.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and it was genuinely shocking at the time when I thought she actually dead. Oh my god, how's this? Not only this book, but this series going to play out, because her character's needed
Mm.
narratively in storytelling sense, to give it sort of propulsion at certain points. So it did throw me for a loop that time, and that was, I think, one of the reasons where I was like, right, I was going to finish reading for the night about now, but I can't anymore. This is
Can't.
not where we're at. We just got to keep going. And once you get to the end of the next chapter, you're like, well, we're in the end game now, but we've only 60 pages to go. Um, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. No, that was something, and it was. I was a little disappointed that I already knew,
yeah.
um, not exactly how it happened, but I already knew what was the
But even
result of it.
that she did survive, and like it's not like in book terms, you find out in the next page. It's not like in TV when they
Right.
do that kind of stuff, and it's maybe a week or so before you find out what's going to
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
And you, but
Yeah.
at the same
There's no
stage,
cliffhanger. Yeah.
yeah, it's no cliffhanger. But at the same stage, you do have that jolt of like, oh, what does this mean for the story? Like, what
Yeah.
it,
No,
it does make you stop.
that's key. That's exactly it. What does it mean for the story? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, and
Very
what it
cool.
does mean for the story is that we get the scene then with the other investigator to the guy who planted the bomb, you know, in the abandoned yard, the abandoned building kind of thing. very classic again crime trope
Classic.
kind
Yep.
of thing. Again,
Yep.
that didn't make an awful lot of sense to me that that guy would have come forward like that, like that. Ah, sorry, like I can't.
Yeah.
That doesn't make an awful lot of sense. But we got a cool set piece out of it for sure.
Yeah. That. You're right. That one scene where he is like, I want to make a deal, and I was kind of like, if the cops did go there and just brought him down, or chased him down or something like that, he still could have pleaded to make a deal with the cop. I mean,
Yeah.
so that I think that was Brew being a little headstrong and overprotective of his partner at the time. Um,
But
so it
but it also didn't make any sense, George. Because Brew was a nobody. He wasn't even the private investigator. He was
right,
in no position to
exactly,
make a
yeah,
deal. I mean, I just like right. This makes for a cool scene, and obviously he gets shot and killed at the end of it, which is another kind of moment of like, oh my god, what does this mean for the story? But just made I just sort of had to forget about it in some ways and kind of go, oh well, it was a cool scene, and because he was a character that was introduced 1 minute and 10 pages later was dead, it also didn't really matter either. It wasn't like he great great relevance in the story.
yeah, and it's interesting because there is, that character was, like you said, introduced 10 pages earlier, and then now he's dead. Uh, but then there's other characters in the book who are introduced very briefly as well, but still have resonance and impact that actually makes sense to the story,
Mm.
or aren't as clunkily put into the story as this guy
Oh,
was, you know. And like the whole what's else,
El
Senor
Manolo, El Manolo,
that guy, yeah, and
amazing.
El Senor too.
Yeah,
That setting that they control, that that crime not
yeah.
family, but that crime, that mafia like setting,
A cartel kind of thing. Yeah,
cartel, there we go, that's the
yeah.
word I'm looking for. um it tells you something about this city that
Mm.
is darker than what we had previously so forth been privy to.
Yeah.
And so I think that's I thought that was just very cool.
Yeah, the El Manolo character is a brilliant character.
Yeah.
Almost like the drunk in the bar who knows nothing but knows everything. Do you know what it made me think of at the time? And again, this predates that. Sorry, this comes after that book, I think, a little bit. It was like Dungeon Master from the old Dungeons and Dragons cartoon. Where he had some sort of cryptic message, and you sort of had to decipher it, and you knew it was really important, but you didn't know exactly what he meant when he said it, but I know it when he said it. It sort of reminded me of that, but I think that character, and I've got to assume and hope that he appears in subsequent books in the series because he was great.
Oh
This
yeah,
very
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Yeah, I don't I don't quite remember, but I don't think that's the kind of character you just throw away.
yeah,
Um, use once and throw away.
so interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then obviously leading on to that scene with El Senor when he does get desperate and he's at the point where he's like, right, I'm gonna put myself in harm's way. And again, this is where that, like I was saying, that trope of having personal investment in the story, like his niece being kidnapped, etc. That's usually what happens in crime books, is that they will take a risk that they probably shouldn't take, which in this case he does, by going to El Senor.
Yeah.
And
Really dumb decision.
yeah, really dumb decision. But I also, at the time when I read it, I didn't like the scene for how unsatisfyingly it resolved. But also, it does make sense for that type of person. El Senor, I'll give you the information, or I will tease you with the idea of information, but I'm going to break you while you're doing it. It's going to cost you personally for my own enjoyment because you sort of humiliated or made it easy to get into my place. Um, in some ways, and we can't be having that because obviously security is
Yeah.
paramount, respect is paramount, and all of that kind of stuff. So I think in reflection, I like it a lot more. See that thing?
Yeah. And his even his El Senor's bodyguard there,
Yeah,
whatever
the
his name
henchman.
was, even he had character. Even
Yeah,
so, it was so I liked it a lot.
yeah. Um, and so we really come to the murder guy, the obvious guy who, well, I mean, I say it's obvious, but also I'm not quite sure that that guy working in that office could go out and kidnap those and torture those girls and organize all that stuff. I don't know. I'm not quite so sure whether the nerdy guy in the office is really that character. It's one of the things that you were talking about CSI earlier on,
Mm.
and as those shows kind of went on, and we got to Criminal Minds. And Criminal Minds is one of my favorites, I have to say, out of that whole thing. When it kind of went into the idea of the types of people that portray certain types of crimes.
Uh,
And I often think Criminal Minds ruined every other crime show for me because often they would just pick somebody at random from the cast and say this was the murder and this was why. But Criminal Minds went into such detail about the types of demographics of people that committed certain crimes, and you would just come away from it sometimes going, it can't be that guy. That guy doesn't fit the profile of the person that commits that type of crime and stuff. And
yeah.
uh, I sort of feel the same way about this, but again, this predates an awful lot of behavioral science kind of stuff like that. And like I say, it was pretty much well telegraphed that he didn't like women.
Yeah.
That all of that. It was pretty well telegraphed that it was going to be, and even his reaction to when Axe Bruder and they came to talk to the office and the way that he bit quite kind of so hard and the way he treated the women in the office, all that kind of stuff. It was quite obvious that it was going to be him. Um, how do you feel about the resolution of it all?
About the resolution.
Like the
I don't.
reveal of him as the killer.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, he was kind of telegraphed.
Yep.
Uh, so I didn't have a problem with it.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was wrapped up pretty well for the time that he
Yeah.
told the story in, and I especially the advent of the bomb really throws it off as far as worrying about that guy. You know what I mean? Like
Mm,
the advent of the bomb was so shocking and so
that's true.
um intrusive into the investigation that I kind of like put the bad guy out of my head for a while,
Yeah.
you know? And so it ended up being kind of um like him finally getting caught and fall whatever. It kind of ended up being a fallout to that incident,
Mm,
you know? And it was like, okay, yeah, good. That's wrapped up now. Now I want to know what's going to happen with Ginny and Bru's relationships and
yeah.
how they're going to work later on. you know
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Sure.
so it was it's very interesting how the focus of the story got so character driven that you expected the bad guy to fall eventually and get caught and what have you, but you were so worried about everything else that it was almost like you just expected that to happen, and then you move on and get to the end of the story.
Yeah.
So,
And I think that's very classic modern crime fiction in terms of it becomes those character pieces. Like there'll be another killer next book. There'll be another crime to solve next book, but actually you're worried about the state of the characters getting there. The characters that you really enjoyed spending your time with and kind of the dynamic that they have with each other. You're worried about them getting there because there'll always be another killer. There'll always be another person. And
yeah,
at least in this book, it doesn't do the thing of just revealing somebody totally random from the cast who you haven't really spent any time with as being
right,
the,
yeah,
the, the killer, that kind of stuff, which is always very unsatisfying because you're like, well, I never had a chance of knowing that
right, yeah, yeah,
at any stage, whereas this did. And yeah, I mean, uh, like I say, I enjoyed the book quite a lot. I
yeah,
have a couple of nitpicks with just the reasoning and the investigation part, but that's really nitpicky. I think I read it in 2 days. It was like
yeah,
I don't read. I hadn't read a book that quick in a long, long time, and it just kept on burning and burning, burning through it.
yeah,
And I really enjoyed the characters. So for me, I found it incredibly satisfying.
Yeah, and part of that is a testament just to his prose, which is just wonderful.
Absolutely.
You know, the way his descriptions of Axbruder in the bar in that first paragraph, I think, is just so. It really just draws you in so well. He uses like the fingernails had a little crescents of grime under them. It's like, yeah, you can picture that bartender right there. That's it's a perfect description of
Yeah.
where Brew is and who he is right off the bat. And so the prose really helps like give you that, "Oh, I got to keep going type of
Yeah.
feeling, you know.
And the fact that it resolves and they manage to catch him because of the relationship between Ginny and Brew. You know, the fact that she calls him Mick and he works out that something's wrong.
Yes.
Because that sort of makes it come full circle in a lot of ways
Yeah.
in terms of resolving it back between the two of them and him basically hauling her out of a bad situation or otherwise, as like a complete 360 from the start of the book, because sort of he could be in the road to recovery
Right.
in some
Yeah.
way. So
Yep. Yeah.
that was,
And yeah. And there was a lot of I thought there was a lot of great introspection on Brew's part
yes.
um, about his problems and what he's got to do to get out of it and get out of his own way. And I have a feeling that Donaldson had some history with people with alcoholism and
Hmm.
stuff like that. I mean, I know his father was a doctor, so he's probably seen that kind of stuff. And so it was good. It made sense for the character, and I liked Bruce's struggles with himself,
Yeah.
and I thought that was really well done. Yeah.
Yeah. Really interesting character. And I'm glad to know that there are more novels in the series
Yes.
to get through. So
Yep. Yep.
I'd
And
have to.
yeah, you'll be glad to know there are some recurring characters.
That's good. I mean, that's always the fun of these series because you don't have to start from scratch all over again. You kind of know where you're starting off, and you just get the next crime, the next killer, the next whatever it is, and hopefully next time it doesn't involve his niece, so they can just be detached from it and just procedurally solve the crime in some way, which is my favorite type
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah. And one thing uh, that this reminded me, it's interesting that we hear about these stupid Epstein files and what have you,
Hmm.
and it's just interesting that even back then in the 80s that um, trafficking was a problem,
Oh yes, yes, yes.
and it's still going on today, and it's a
Yeah,
horrible thing.
sure. Yeah. Oh God. Yeah, it doesn't like. I think it's interesting that it sort of becomes entertainment in this form,
Hmm.
if that makes sense. You know what I mean? People are reading it like true crime and all that kind of stuff as a form of entertainment, but those things in reality are unconscionable. I mean, there's sort of
Yeah.
things you can't think about happening in the real world, and you know, stories within these books don't take away from the horror of those crimes in a lot of ways. You know, it's still a very different thing to hear about that happening in real life and stuff. So yeah.
Yep.
So that's you very squarely on the crime train, and on the way to saying to Mr. Donaldson next time you see him, I have read all of your work, Mr. Donaldson.
Well, not yet. I do have two more to go.
Indeed.
So I do have this copy of The Man Who Fought Alone,
Uh, Have you,
which is
have
the
you got
fourth
two,
one.
have you got two of those beautiful hardcovers?
I do, yeah.
Oh, you have to get the other
This
two.
this one is signed by Mr. Donaldson. Yeah.
Oh my god!
And yeah, this one is the second one, The Man Who Risked His Partner,
Right,
and it's a advanced uncorrected proof
very good.
of the book. So
So maybe you could correct it as you go along and hand it to him next time and say, "Look, I've done your work for you, Mr.
I couldn't
Donaldson."
I couldn't find anything.
Very good, very good. So, anything else to say on the man who killed his
On
brother?
the man who killed his brother. No, I was so glad that you wanted to read this with me, um, because it's been sitting on my shelf for 8 months or so, and so I was it's always was staring at me. So I was very glad to get to it. I was very glad to get to the mystery of what happened to Ginny,
Mm-hmm.
um, from when I read the second book a long time ago, and yeah, um, my quest to read everything he's written is nearing completion.
It is, and I'm only at the start of that journey, so this is all very exciting.
Yeah, sure
In that
is.
regard, that's me. 2 Donaldson books down, plenty more to go as it goes.
Awesome.
So, if you want to find you, Jarrod, where would you find you hiding on the interwebs?
It is right there at the Fantasy Thinker YouTube channel, and you can also find both of us on Speculative Speculations
Indeed.
and the Oscar Project for Film Chewing podcast, and I'm also on the Panel Chewing for Pick of the Week.
Indeed. Indeed. And I'll add in the Wars of Light and Shadow read along, the Sci Fi Masterworks read along group that we have.
Oh, yeah.
Basically, all of those reading groups are all on pagetune.com if anybody would like to join and break up this two-hander, which feels a bit lonely, I have to say. It's not quite the same, just as enjoyable as it is. But we found ourselves with a free weekend night that we could record on. I'm very glad
It's
that you
very, very
were my
apropos
first.
to the setting, though.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I'll be Brew to your Jenny, I think. I don't know. Brains to the brawn. Although nobody ever called me the brawn in any kind of sense. That I suppose that's very much not true in that case. But yes, until next time, I'll speak to you soon, Jarrod, and I'll speak to everybody else in the comments soon as well. Take care. All the best.